Over on BBC Two now, Nicola Loud, the United Kingdom's Young Musician of the Year, is competing in Vienna with 17 other talented musicians from throughout Europe for the coveted title of the Eurovision Young Musician of the Year.
The 9 million people who read the Radio Times are now enjoying an even better magazine. For as well as being Britain's most popular programme guide, the Radio Times is now the most colourful. Radio Times, the most colourful way to put yourself in the picture.
Commodore Swanson has taken his last salute, which is not a surprise to quite a few people, most of whom would be delighted to see him dead.
My daughter was a fool because she married you, Charles, and I was a fool for letting you run things so long. Come on, don't be so shocked and innocent. You all had your hands in the till one way or another. There's only one decent man here.
Eat, drink, and be merry.
For the Commodore's dead, and Columbo returns to face a serious challenge. Wednesday at 7:30 on One.
Now on One, the going gets tough for four reluctant heroes, as all paths lead to Silverado. A little later on this evening, Burt Reynolds bursts onto the screen as a former professional football star who finds himself in jail and in a tight squeeze trying to turn a bunch of convicts into a winning football team. The Mean Machine is at midnight.
Who are they?
Vicky Elliott is dead. A solicitor is missing.
I could tell you about one of their little rackets. Not so little.
The rot spreads.
Batman, this is serious fraud. Something new. How many interviews have you sat in on for me?
Is Miss Brinkwell a link?
A pattern. Another little empire being bought up cheap with hot money. Another slice of the city. We could be getting closer to this thing. We might even be getting ahead.
In this chain of corruption.
BBC Two, in just over 5 minutes, devotes some open space to comedy writer Tom Boys, who samples the raw comedy of the Northern club circuit and questions the comedian's artistic licence to abuse and asks whether or not a good laugh never did anyone any harm. Here on BBC One, in just over 20 minutes, the packed wards of Holby General create a few problems in Casualty. First on BBC One, the news and sport at 10 to 10 with Michael Burke.
Václav Havel's Civic Forum is heading for victory in Czechoslovakia's election. Celebrations in Prague as projections show they've won 4 times more votes than their nearest rivals. And Neil Kinnock attacks Mrs. Thatcher over the wasted 80s. Good evening. Civic Forum, which led the movement that overthrew the communists in Czechoslovakia, has won a resounding victory in that country's first free election for 44 years. The results are still being announced, but projections from early counts show they've won around half the votes cast, 4 times as many as their nearest rivals. It'll give them a majority in both chambers of parliament and mean Václav Havel will be re-elected president.
The music they chose was hardly Czech, but supporters of Civic Forum, the movement that led and made the revolution, were celebrating a famous victory. early projections understated the two-thirds majority that the Forum will enjoy in Parliament. For its leadership, the end of the beginning.
Mám pocit, že dnes teprve přestávám být disidentem.
I feel that it is only today that I have stopped being a dissident.
The results broadcast on Czech television brought no comfort to the other parties, though some of them will be invited to join a coalition to make the government as broadly based as possible. The Forum, and only the Forum, had anything to celebrate. The votes are being counted amidst a political scandal involving the leader of one of the other parties, Dr. Joseph Bartonček. The moment the polls were closed, the government gave its version of the charges.
And now I would like to say data on the activities of Mr. Bartonček as an agent of the state security.
The principal charge read out by the public prosecutor that for 17 years the politician was paid by the security service to give information on the activities of dissident groups. Dr. Bartonček, who's an important political figure here, accused the government of using the methods of the old totalitarian state against him. He was in hospital with a heart condition today. His party said if the charges were proved, it would not want such a member. The past casts long shadows forward in Czechoslovakia, but the country's 3 symphony orchestras playing in the Old Town Square of Prague today helped to dispel them. Václav Havel, the real winner of the elections, was also present. For the music of Smetana, My Country. Martin Bell, BBC News, Prague.
And a special programme on BBC Two later tonight will have details of the first results. That's Elections 90, Czechoslovakia at 11:25. Here, the Labour leader Neil Kinnock has sharply attacked the government for what he called the wasteful 80s. He accused the Conservatives of throwing away the profits from oil revenues and the selling off of public assets.
Mr Kinnock at a TUC gala in County Durham condemned what he called the Tories' wasted 11 years. Years when he said the government had imposed the biggest tax burden in British history.
Never has so much been taken away from so many, by so few, with so little to show for it, as the Tory 11 years.
And he ridiculed Mrs Thatcher's claim that under her, Britain now mattered in the world.
What's she been saying this week? We've got to have more nuclear weapons, and we've got to put them in Germany. The Germans said, that is unthinkable. Britain matters more under Margaret Thatcher. I've never heard anything so nonsensical.
Mr Kinnock drew comfort from the collapse of the SDP, saying the divisions that had kept Mrs Thatcher in power were now ending. But his words were quickly condemned by the Liberal Democrat leader Paddy Ashdown. He said Labour had learned little in its years in exile, and they still arrogantly assume they are entitled to power. The Employment Secretary, Michael Howard, accused Mr Kinnock of blustering, saying it's crucial for our country that he's never in a position to decide anything that really does matter. Mr Kinnock can expect more attacks like that in the coming months. His own strategy is to accuse the Conservatives of incompetence while promising greater responsibility under Labour.
Mrs Thatcher has spent the day in Kiev, the capital of the Ukraine. She visited an exhibition featuring family life in this country, and she's had a night at the opera.
Kiev's Park of Economic Achievement echoed this morning with the sound of British pomp and ceremony.